kind of funny to think about this term "new" that we use in history of culture and ideas. New thought is really not new for us. It's like, over 100 years old. Even the New Age is way older than you, and came about, while I was a kid, and it's really not so new. One of the things that you see happening over and over and over again in America is there's going to be religious groups that are arising that are always going to be coming out of the fringe and more or less remaining on the fringe. But because we do have this, religious diversity and protection under the Constitution, they're able to continue and expand. And if there's something vital about them, something that appeals to people, they will survive for quite a while. Some of the movements we're looking at died out. Some of them actually managed to survive. Your book talks first, after it gets through all this, sort of preliminary stuff, it starts talking about what they call harmonialism. And they talk about metaphysics. Now, harmonialism, it doesn't actually have anything to do with music per se, so that term's probably not going to mean much to you. Does this term metaphysics mean anything to you? Do you have any associations with it at all? Yeah.
Like Plato and
okay.
all that stuff.
Yeah. And I like that because I like Plato a lot because I teach Plato. And he actually plays a role in this Neoplatonic philosophy. And you say that because you went to college, and you took an intro to philosophy class, right? You got introduced to metaphysics as the study of ultimate reality, and whoever taught you had you read some Plato and probably some Aristotle, and maybe Descartes. Descartes was doing metaphysics. Somebody who's ringing a bell to you, all of you who took intro. Kant, Nietzsche. Okay, these are all metaphysicians. They're all taking stances on ultimate reality. When I got to graduate school, I took a metaphysics class as one of the first classes that I was in. And I remember the professor, the first day of class, he began by saying, now I just want to clear something up. If you're here to talk about crystals or the rainbow or, cosmic resonances or the music of the spheres, this really is not that sort of metaphysics class. We're not going to do aromatherapy or meditation or that sort of thing. That's a different kind of metaphysics. What we're doing is philosophical metaphysics. So that'd be like, Plato, Aristotle, Descartes. A lot of people do mean by metaphysics what's going to connect you up with ultimate reality. And the reason why they're doing things, with crystals or, practices having to do with the correspondences between different metals is because they think that's actually going to connect the individual, or reconnect the individual, with ultimate reality. What all of these things that we're studying in this chapter have to do with metaphysics is that they view the human person as an individual as kind of disconnected from what's truly real. And the reason why he's using this term harmonialism, you want to restore the harmony between yourself and the cosmos, or the ultimate reality behind things. If we're talking in terms of Platonism, the realm of the forms, or something along those lines. All of that would be what these people are calling metaphysics. And your book brings up a few other terms as well. They talk about the Philosophia Perennis, the Perennial Philosophy, found in the mystical traditions of both East and West. So, where are they going to go for that? Hinduism, Buddhism. We're going to see this take on a role with some things a little bit later. In the West, it's been primarily Platonic and Neoplatonic philosophy. We, by the way, have a specialist here at Marist who you could, if you want to know more about this, he's not a mystic, but if you want to know more about this, I would talk to Professor Snyder, who is quite learned about Renaissance Platonism. Your book also talks about occultism. When we use this term occult, what do you think of? Probably horror movie stuff, right? What are horror movies about usually? Besides the zombie stuff. Zombie stuff is usually about some disease. What else do we have in horror? Well, and besides slashers, forget Freddy and all that. What else do we have then? I'm sure you guys watch horror movies. Some of you at least. What else?
Split up.
What's that?
Never split up.
That's a good, smart thing to do in a horror movie. But I mean, what is this? They're not there to actually teach you moral lessons like never abandon your comrades. They're sort of escapism, right? Mm-hmm. But why are they scary? Well, because they have to do with this supernatural, right? Mm-hmm. Something, how many of you have watched The Ring? The original. Not the Japanese one, but like the American one. Only a few of you have seen it? Watch it. It's really scary. You know why it's so scary? Because you see this little scary girl coming out of the TV with these other people, and then you think, if you watch it by yourself late at night, oh crap, that, I know it's not real, but something could come out of my TV. And, your mind is sort of playing tricks on you with this. But if you actually do believe that what we observe is not all that there is, then there could be an entire supernatural realm. And it doesn't all have to be horror movie stuff. It could actually be good stuff that, makes your life better, that helps you, in terms of health, in terms of wealth, helps you live a more full life. So I'm going to run very quickly, just mentioning these three things that your book talks about. They talk about Swedenborg and Swedenborgianism, which is kind of a Neoplatonist view. They also talk about spiritualism, and then they talk about mesmerism. And the reason why I'm not going to spend any time on them, they all died out. What I do want to focus on instead would be Christian Science and Theosophy and self-help. So Christian Science, we're thinking in terms of the founder, whose name is Mary Baker Eddy, who has a long history that your book talks about. She's a seeker. She's trying to find religious meaning. She's not finding it in the churches, in the movements that she's going to. And then she has a near-death or sort of sick experience, and she finds herself cured of her sickness, after reading a biblical verse. And she sort of slowly expands an entire system out of this. Her views were that physical and mental suffering, emotional disappointment, all these sorts of things have to do with getting metaphysics wrong. Suffering, death, all these sorts of things have to do with not realizing that there is no such thing as material existence. That evil doesn't really exist. It's just in our minds. Christian Science focuses on healing the person. It says all physical matter is illusory and irreal. All that is real is spirit. Salvation lies in the realization of this truth and working out its full range of implications and applications. That's what's discussed in her Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. And what the Christian Scientists then focus on primarily is spreading her message and carrying out healing. Now, this also entails not going to regular doctors. It's interesting, too, your book points out, a lot of doctors were not very good doctors at the time, and she may actually have saved some people by getting them not to go to the doctors who have prescribed all sorts of terrible things. Nowadays, not quite the same. But Christian Science is still around. They actually publish a very well-respected journal, the Christian Science Monitor. You may have actually used that as a scholarly source for some of your your writings from time to time. And they still carry out their services weekly. The services consist in some part in reading from the Bible or reading from her text, the Science and Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. They have reading rooms. There's probably a reading room in Poughkeepsie, I'm willing to bet. I'm not sure exactly where it is. But if you want to know more about Christian Science, you could walk in and they let you sit and peruse their stuff. Mary Baker Edie was kind of a charismatic figure. She's sort of a representative of somebody who, was both seeking religiously and probably couldn't find, an application for her talents in other areas, and an entire church comes out of that. Theosophy, we have another female founder, which is, Helena Blavatsky. Theosophy is coming from two Greek words. Theos means God, Sophie, wisdom. So this is divine wisdom. And the notion was that in the great religions and philosophies, there is a kind of wisdom that's being passed on that can be taught, that can be culled out of it. It takes a lot of work, and it's not there for everybody, so it's not there on the surface, but you have to dig into it. And she claims to have had these contacts with these masters or Mahatmas, the ascended masters. She taught something kind of similar to Edie in that all reality is ultimately one and grounded in consciousness. She also taught individual souls are going to be successively reincarnated through cosmic cycles to approach their ultimate source. And so the goal, if that's the case, is to try to shorten the process. And again, how do you do that? Get the metaphysics right. You can bring yourself into harmony with, ultimate reality. Her society breaks up into a bunch of different groups after she dies. You could also look at anthroposophy with Rudolf Steiner, or sometimes it's associated with the Waldorf schools over here as being kind of in the same vein as that, and they are quite widespread as well. Your book doesn't talk about them, but that's more or less in the same idea. And then your book also talks about self-help. There's entire sections in bookstores called self-help. What are those sections? Have any of you dug around in them at all? You're probably not at the age where your life is screwed up enough where you'd start buying self-help books. But, give it another 10 years or so. And you might find some of those things useful. A lot of it tends to be kind of watered-down philosophy, frankly, from my perspective. If you read Aristotle, you'll probably actually do better than reading most self-help books, or read Kant or somebody like that, because they actually knew more about what makes us tick and how to unscrew up your life. But a lot of self-help is about this same process of sort of getting the metaphysics right, figuring out what's ultimately real, and then bringing yourself into alignment with it. Where you guys might have encountered this is in terms of blog posts, like in Harvard Business Review. 10 steps to, supercharge your job performance. That tends to be along the same lines as self-help. Tends to be along the same lines of, well, if you can just get your perspective right, then everything is going to fall into place. Your book brings up some examples of like Emile Coulier, who had this verbal formula. You would actually look into the mirror and say, every day in every way, my life is getting better and better. I am better and better and better. Dale Carnegie wrote this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that had to do not just with rhetorical techniques. It also said, well, you have to have a positive attitude. If you don't have a positive attitude, good things won't come to you. You have to be happy about the universe, and then the universe will be happy towards you. It reaches kind of a culmination in Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote this book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And so there's a lot of things along these lines, and they all sort of fit into the self-help framework. And what's undergirding them is this sort of view of metaphysics, that if you can just figure out what's really real and how to unscrew up yourself so that you're not thinking the wrong things, you will actually make your life better, and you will end up not only with health, but also with wealth. You'll be a happy person. So